Audrey Penrose lived in a little stone cottage on the edge of Thirsk, Yorkshire. Her life was quiet, almost silent, but not in the peaceful way. It was the sort of silence that echoed with memories, birthdays missed, letters never answered, video calls declined with polite excuses. The village knew her simply as Mrs. Penrose. The kind woman who always had a scarf around her neck, who watered her garden precisely at 5, and who once worked as the head librarian at the county library. Few knew she had 3 grown children. Fewer still had ever seen them visit. Audrey, now 73, spent most of her days with her books and her cat, Clementine. Occasionally, she cooked old wartime recipes, ones she had learnt from her mother, and posted the process online, using a second-hand phone and an ancient tripod. She didn't know much about editing. There were no filters. Just her warm voice, the bubbling of gravy, and tales from the past. One morning, she uploaded a video titled "Ration Pie Just Like Mum Made in 42. She wore her late mother's apron and recounted how her family had once shared a single pie over 3 days. She chuckled about how her brother once tried to steal the last slice. She clicked upload, made herself a cup of tea, and thought nothing of it. By the next day, her phone would not stop buzzing. Notifications spilled across her screen like confetti. Thousands of views. Comments pouring in, some laughing, some crying, all calling her the nation's gran. A BBC reporter emailed her. A literary agent followed. Her subscriber count doubled every hour. Audrey looked at the screen, confused. And so did Sebastian. In a modern glass flat in Canary Wharf, Sebastian Penrose, her eldest, a financial consultant who hadn't called since last Christmas, stared at his office monitor, where his assistant had just pulled up the trending video. "That's your mum, isn't it?" she said, smirking. "She's everywhere right now." He didn't answer at first. And neither did Claire, the second child, who paused her Pilates class in Bath when a friend sent her the link. Nor did Joshua, the youngest, who nearly dropped his camera on set in Manchester when a crew member exclaimed, "That woman reminds me of your mum." One by one, they saw her again. Not the tired woman with spectacles and arthritis. But someone else, someone the world was suddenly clapping for. And for the first time in over a decade, all 3 siblings sent her a message. "Hi Mum. Just saw your video. Wow." Audrey stared at her phone, the screen glowing with messages. She hadn't expected anything like this. For years, silence had been her companion. Now, suddenly, the silence shattered, replaced by buzzing notifications and unexpected words from children who once seemed so distant. Her eldest, Sebastian, was the first to call. His voice was hesitant, as if unsure how to speak to a mother who had been a quiet figure in the background for so long. "Mum, I saw the video. It's amazing. You're amazing." Audrey smiled softly. "Thank you, Sebastian. It's just a bit of cooking, really. But it means more than that," he said, clearing his throat. "You've reminded everyone what matters." Then Claire's message popped up, "Mum, I'd love to visit. Can we meet?" And Joshua's, "Can I come home for New Year's? It's been too long." 21 years. 3 children, each living separate lives in the cities, London, Bath, Manchester, had gone years without a proper visit. Now they were coming back. To her cottage. To the quiet village that had held her secrets all those years. Audrey felt a mix of emotions, joy, anxiety, doubt. Could she trust their sudden interest? Were they truly here for her, or only for the spotlight shining on her now? Still, deep down, a part of her longed to see them, to hear their voices, to laugh and argue like the family they once were. Plans were made. Sebastian booked the cottage for the week around New Year's. Claire arranged her work schedule. Joshua rearranged filming. Audrey prepared. Dusting off old photographs, setting the table with her mother's china, and baking the pie recipe that had started it all. Outside, the Yorkshire wind howled softly. Inside, a fragile hope grew. Perhaps this unexpected fame could mend more than just her reputation. Perhaps it could mend their family. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of preparation and hesitation for Audrey. The quiet village of Thirsk had never seen such activity at her little stone cottage. The garden, once wild with nettles and forget-me-nots, was tidied and pruned. Fresh curtains hung in the windows, and the scent of lavender filled the air, mingling with the aroma of fresh bread baking in the oven. Audrey was not sure what to expect. Would Sebastian still be the distant son she remembered, too busy to notice the small things? Would Claire laugh over memories as if no time had passed, or would she stay cold and polite, keeping her distance? And Joshua, the youngest, the free spirit, would he still be chasing his dreams, or was he ready to face the past they had all tried to forget? The first to arrive was Claire. She stepped from her car with a cautious smile, her hands clutching a small box of gifts. "Hello, Mum," she said softly, voice just above a whisper. Audrey's heart tightened. "Claire, my dear. It's so good to see you," she replied, pulling her into a gentle hug. The afternoon was spent in quiet conversations, catching up on lost years, but with an awkwardness that none of them could shake. Over tea, Claire spoke of her job, the pressures, the loneliness of city life. Audrey listened, offering comfort, though there was a distance that felt almost physical. Then came Sebastian, arriving late one frosty evening. He entered the cottage with a professional air, his expensive coat and polished shoes standing out among the rough stone walls and worn wooden floors. "Mum," he said, his voice a mixture of pride and guilt. "I've missed this. I've missed you." Audrey saw the exhaustion behind his sharp suit, the weight he carried beneath his polished exterior. "It's good you're here," she said simply. Joshua was last. Bursting through the door with a laugh and a camera slung over his shoulder, he brought with him the energy and chaos Audrey had missed. "Mum, this place hasn't changed a bit," he grinned, flopping down onto the old armchair. "Except you've gone viral." "Who knew?" Laughter filled the room for the first time in decades. Stories were shared, old songs hummed, and Audrey felt a flicker of the family she once knew. But beneath the joy, old wounds lingered. Silent glances between siblings, half-finished sentences, and moments of tension reminded Audrey that the past had not simply disappeared. One night, as the wind howled outside, Audrey sat alone in the kitchen, staring at a faded photograph of her mother and herself. The fame and the reunion felt surreal, like a dream she might wake from any moment. Was this the start of healing, or just a brief spark before the shadows returned? The morning after the family reunion began, a fragile calm settled over the cottage. Audrey woke to the sound of birdsong and the soft hum of a kettle boiling. The sun streamed through the curtains, casting gentle patterns on the worn wooden floor. As the children stirred, Audrey felt a quiet hope blooming. Perhaps this was the new beginning she had longed for. Over breakfast, the conversation was light but cautious. Sebastian talked about his demanding job managing a financial firm in London. Claire mentioned the challenges of balancing her career and family life in Bath. Joshua shared stories from his travels and the quirky moments he captured with his camera. But beneath the surface, old tensions simmered. When Audrey asked about their memories of childhood, Sebastian grew defensive. "We all had our struggles, Mum. It wasn't perfect." Claire nodded, adding quietly, "Sometimes it felt like you were never really there." Joshua frowned. "It wasn't just Mum. Dad left early, and we had to fend for ourselves." Audrey's heart ached. The wounds were deeper than she had realized. Later, while clearing the breakfast table, Audrey found a note slipped under her plate. It was from Sebastian. "Mum, I want us to be honest. I know we've all been hurt. Maybe it's time to talk about everything, the good and the bad." Audrey clutched the paper, feeling a tear escape. Could they really confront the past? Could they speak the truths that had been buried for so long? That afternoon, the conversation shifted to the family's history. Audrey told stories of her nursing days, of the struggles to keep the family together after her husband left. She shared how lonely those years had been, how she had buried pain beneath her daily duties. Sebastian listened with a rare softness. Claire's eyes glistened, and even Joshua grew quiet. For the first time in years, they were not just mother and children sharing a roof, they were a family beginning to understand each other again. But the shadows of the past were not yet gone. That evening, Audrey overheard a whispered argument behind the living room door. Voices low but sharp. "Why didn't you tell us?" Claire asked. Sebastian replied, "I didn't want to hurt Mum more." Joshua's voice cracked, "We deserve to know." Audrey sat frozen, heart pounding. The secrets between them were surfacing, and the road to healing was winding and uncertain. The days that followed were heavy with unspoken words and quiet glances. The cottage that once felt like a sanctuary now seemed fragile, as if at any moment it might shatter under the weight of old wounds. Audrey spent long hours in her small garden, seeking solace among the roses and foxgloves, but the peace was elusive. Each evening brought new tensions. The siblings seemed caught in a silent battle, their conversations laced with half-truths and buried resentments. One night, the fragile calm finally broke. It started with a simple question from Joshua during dinner. "Mum, why did Dad really leave?" "We've never known the full story." Audrey paused, the knife she held trembling slightly. She looked up at her children, seeing the hunger in their eyes for answers she had long avoided. "Your father left because he was lost," she said softly. "He couldn't cope with his own demons, and instead of facing them, he ran away." Sebastian scoffed, "That sounds like an excuse." Claire's eyes filled with tears. "We deserved more than excuses, Mum." Joshua's voice was quiet but firm. "We needed you, Mum. But sometimes it felt like you left us too." Audrey's chest tightened. The years of silence and distance felt like a flood, crashing down all at once. "I never left you," she whispered. "I stayed. I worked night shifts to put food on the table. I held this family together, even when it felt impossible." The room fell into heavy silence. None of them knew what to say. Then Sebastian broke the silence, his voice trembling. "I'm sorry. I didn't understand." Claire nodded, wiping away a tear. "Neither did I." Joshua reached across the table, taking Audrey's hand. "Maybe now we can start to heal." Audrey looked at her children, the love and pain tangled in their eyes. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something new. Outside, the wind howled, but inside the cottage, a fragile light flickered, the first glow of hope after a long, dark night. The following morning brought a subtle shift in the atmosphere. The heavy weight of unspoken grudges began to lift, replaced by tentative steps toward understanding. Audrey prepared breakfast in the small kitchen while the children gathered around the table, their conversations quieter but warmer than before. The memory of last night's raw honesty lingered like a balm, soothing old wounds. Sebastian, who had always been the most guarded, surprised them all by suggesting they take a walk along the nearby cliffs overlooking the sea. "Fresh air might clear our heads," he said, forcing a small smile. The family bundled up against the crisp coastal breeze and set off. The rugged landscape of Northumberland stretched before them, wild and untamed, a fitting backdrop for their fragile reunion. As they walked, Audrey told stories of her youth, of the time she met their father, of dreams she once had, and sacrifices made silently for their sake. Claire listened intently, her usual skepticism softened by the warmth in her mother's voice. Joshua captured moments on his camera, pausing occasionally to snap a candid smile or a thoughtful glance. At the cliff's edge, they paused, gazing out over the grey expanse of the North Sea. The waves crashed relentlessly, a reminder that life moves forward, no matter the storms faced. Sebastian broke the silence. "I want to try harder, Mum. To be the family you deserve." Audrey felt tears prick her eyes. "So do I, Sebastian. So do I." They stood together, a fragile unit against the vast sky, bound by history but looking forward, ready to rebuild what had once been broken. For Audrey, this moment was a gift, proof that even after years of distance and pain, love could still find a way. As the days passed, the fragile new bonds between Audrey and her children grew stronger. They began to share more than just stories, they shared moments, laughter, and even tears. Joshua, ever the photographer, suggested they create a family album, capturing not only the present but weaving in memories from the past. Old photographs were brought out, dusted off, and carefully examined. Each picture sparked conversations, some joyful, others bittersweet. One afternoon, Claire found an old letter tucked behind a faded photo in an album. The handwriting was unfamiliar, elegant, and careful. Audrey took the letter, her eyes softening as she read aloud. The letter was from their father, written years before he left. It spoke of regret, of love still lingering beneath his mistakes, and a hope that one day they might understand. Sebastian looked away, swallowing hard. "I never knew he felt that way." Audrey nodded. "Neither did I. Some things we only learn too late." The discovery of the letter opened a door to healing none of them had expected. Conversations about forgiveness and acceptance started to bloom. The siblings began to see each other not just as estranged family members but as people trying to find their way back to each other. In the evenings, Audrey and her children would sit by the fire, sharing dreams for the future, plans for holidays, visits, even promises to stay in touch no matter what. For the first time in many years, the cottage felt alive again, filled with warmth, hope, and the possibility of new beginnings. The last evening at the cottage arrived quietly, like a soft sigh after a long day. The family gathered around the fire once more, wrapped in thick blankets and shared memories. Audrey looked around at her children, Simon, Claire, Joshua, and Sebastian, their faces illuminated by the flickering flames. She saw not just her children but friends, allies, and kindred spirits who had weathered storms and come out stronger. Simon cleared his throat and held up a small, carefully wrapped box. "Mum, this is for you. Something to remember us by." Inside was a delicate charm bracelet, each charm representing a memory they had shared over the past days, a seashell from their walk, a miniature camera for Joshua's passion, a tiny book symbolizing stories told, and a heart, for the love that had endured despite everything. Audrey's eyes glistened with tears. "Thank you. This means more than you know." They talked late into the night, voices soft and hearts full. Plans were made to meet again soon, no longer out of obligation but from genuine desire. As dawn broke over the rugged Northumberland coast, Audrey stepped outside. The morning air was crisp, carrying the scent of salt and promise. She smiled, knowing that while the past could never be changed, the future was theirs to shape, together. The journey had been unexpected and challenging, but it had brought them back to each other. And sometimes, that was the greatest gift of all.